Story 1. The day I moved into Blackwood Hall, room 313, the air already tasted stale, like forgotten dust and damp secrets. It was an ancient building on campus, all crumbling brick and skeletal ivy, whispered to be a relic from the university's darkest days. My new roommate, Chloe, was already there, a quiet, studious girl who kept to her side of the room, her nose perpetually buried in textbooks. This suited me just fine. I craved independence, the fresh slate of college life. Little did I know, the slate of room 313 was already written on, in a script I would come to understand in my deepest nightmares. The first few weeks were mundane. The usual dorm life, loud hallways, communal bathrooms, the comforting thrum of 100 young lives converging. But even then, little things started to pick at the edges of my perception. My backpack, which I always left on my desk chair, would sometimes be on the floor when I returned, as if it had slipped. My alarm clock, a clunky digital model, would display random times, hours off, forcing me to reset it daily. I blamed faulty wiring, or Chloe, though she denied it, her eyes never leaving her books. Then came the sounds. Faint at first, almost imperceptible. A rhythmic dragging sound that seemed to come from the wall behind my bed. Scrape. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. It was soft, like something heavy being pulled across a rough surface, or perhaps fingernails on drywall. I'd press my ear against the plaster, convinced I'd pinpoint its source, but it would always stop the moment I concentrated. Chloe, when I asked, claimed to hear nothing but the usual dorm noise. "You're just adjusting, Leo," she'd murmur, her gaze flicking briefly to my face before retreating to her pages. The feeling of being watched became a constant companion. Not just a generic paranoia, but a specific, chilling sensation that originated from the dark mouth of my closet. It was a standard built-in, a deep recess with a single, flickering fluorescent light. I started leaving its door ajar, telling myself it was to make the room feel bigger. But in truth, it was because the solid, closed door felt like a barrier holding something in, something that wanted to get out. I'd catch glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision, just inside the closet's darkness. A fleeting shadow, a shift that wasn't there when I looked directly. My heart would hammer, but rationality would kick in. Just clothes swaying, my imagination. One night, I woke abruptly to an excruciating cold, deeper than any autumn chill. My eyes snapped open. The room was plunged into an inky blackness, the kind that feels heavier than usual. My breath plumed in front of me. I shivered, pulling my blanket tighter, but the cold was inside me, a bone-deep invasion. Then I heard it, a whisper. Not Chloe's. She was a heavy sleeper, always. This was a dry, raspy sound, right by my ear, too close, too distinct. It wasn't words, not exactly, but a guttural, drawn-out hissing that made my skin crawl. I squeezed my eyes shut, paralyzed, listening to my own frantic heartbeat. When I dared to open them again, the room was still freezing, the hiss gone, but a faint, putrid smell lingered, like wet earth and something metallic, like old blood. Sleep became a luxury. I'd drift off, only to be jolted awake by a feeling of immense pressure on my chest, a crushing weight that stole my breath. I'd lie there, frozen, unable to move, unable to scream, my eyes scanning the darkness for whatever invisible force held me captive. One morning, still groggy from a particularly vivid night terror, I noticed faint, irregular scratches on the underside of my desk, right where my knees would touch. They weren't new. The wood was discolored around them, hinting at age. They looked like desperate claw marks, forming an almost symbol, or perhaps a single tortured letter, an M or a W, elongated and twisted. Chloe, of course, hadn't noticed them. Or so she said. The isolation started to gnaw at me. I tried talking to other students, making light of my weird old dorm. They laughed, shared their own ghost stories, but none of them had the same hollow-eyed look I knew was mirroring back at me. I started spending hours in the library, poring over the university archives, desperate for an explanation. Blackwood Hall, built in 1898, originally a sanatorium, then converted to a women's dormitory in the 1930s. There were vague reports of unrest and nervous breakdowns among the students in the 50s. Then, a chilling discovery. A small, almost forgotten article from 1957. A student named Eleanor Vance, room 313, had vanished without a trace after a severe mental decompensation. Her diary was found, filled with increasingly frantic entries about the whispers, the scratcher, and the feeling of being pulled into the shadows. The last entry simply read, "It wants me, it wants to hide me, wants to." I felt a cold dread settle deep in my stomach. Eleanor Vance, room 313. My room. That night, I was alone. Chloe had gone home for the weekend. The silence was oppressive, punctuated only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. I tried to study, but every creak of the building, every distant car horn, amplified my terror. The dragging sound started again, more distinct now, the scrape. Scrape. Pause. Scrape behind the wall by my bed. It was accompanied by a low, guttural humming, a vibration I felt more than heard. I clutched my blanket, my knuckles white, staring at the closet door. It was slightly ajar, just as I'd left it. But something was different. A sliver of deeper blackness seemed to pulse within. Then, the cold returned, radiating from the closet, stealing the warmth from the room, making my breath fog. The closet door slowly, painstakingly, began to open wider. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My eyes were fixed on the widening gap. The humming grew, filling the room, vibrating through the floorboards. As the door opened fully, revealing a darkness that seemed to defy the dim light from my desk lamp, I saw it. It wasn't a fully formed figure. It was an absence, a distortion in the air, a hunched, shifting shadow that seemed to writhe and contort. Its edges were indistinct, like smoke, but within the amorphous mass, two pinpricks of light, like dull embers, stared back at me. And then a hand, skeletal and long-fingered, began to emerge from the shadow, pale and translucent, stretching towards me. It was too long, too thin, its joints bending at unnatural angles. The scratching sound intensified, coming from inside the closet, as if the thing was clawing at the very fabric of existence to pull itself free. A whisper, clear and direct this time, slithered into my mind, chilling me to the marrow. "You see me, Leo. You hear me. Good." She tried to deny me. "But you see. And now, you'll join." Panic, raw and absolute, finally broke my paralysis. With a strangled cry, I scrambled off my bed, tearing myself away from the penetrating gaze of those ember eyes. I didn't grab anything, didn't look back. I just ran. I burst out of room 313, sprinting down the deserted hallway, my bare feet slapping against the cold linoleum, not caring who heard, not caring how insane I looked. I pounded down 3 flights of stairs, out of Blackwood Hall, and into the cool night air, gasping, shaking, knowing I could never, ever go back. I dropped out of university a week later, my parents bewildered but understanding given my gaunt appearance and constant tremors. I found a small apartment across town, convinced the distance would offer solace. But the silence of my new place was an empty canvas for the whispers. The faint metallic smell sometimes drifted from my own closet. The subtle rhythmic scratching would begin late at night, a familiar cadence from behind the wall by my bed. And one morning, as I unpacked a box of old textbooks, I found it, scratched onto the underside of the desk in my new apartment, faint but unmistakable. The same twisted, elongated symbol I'd seen in room 313. An M, or a W, a sign of desperation, a mark of something that had attached itself to me. I still feel the cold sometimes. I still see flickers of movement in the shadows. And I know, with a chilling certainty, that Eleanor Vance wasn't trapped in room 313. She was just the first. And I, Leo, now carry the chilling, scratching whisper of whatever haunted Blackwood Hall, the same entity that wanted her, and now wants me too. It didn't just want to hide her. It wanted to be with her. And now, it's with me. And it's not letting go.